who knows if that last recording is going to be able to live on YouTube. It would be nice. So, fingers crossed. Well, I said we were going to think a little bit more about this picture, so let's do that. Let's see. Here I get my drawing controls. Yes, but I don't want the screenshot. I want the live preview. There we go. And since we're just looking at a picture, I'll keep the drawing tools up, actually. And I'll put them on the correct side. I wanted to lead, actually, with saying just a little bit more about this. First of all, I want to say that I do observe this pattern, this red on the left, blue on the right. A lot, I see that a lot in just in artwork and just a lot in the world. And, I really do think that it probably reflects something to do with brain hemispheres and a weird unconscious synchronistic effect surrounding that. In the images that these things called human beings make. People are weird. We don't know exactly what we're up to when we make images or when we perceive images. So it just could be, that somehow when we construct pictures, we're thinking about all this kind of conscious information. We're doing something very important. We have some kind of ego plan. This is meant to be a sword. Here's a shield, I don't know. And, we're architecting for me as an artist, we could also say this is a palette, and painting is being made, but I have some huge capital V vision for what this whole thing is going to be. And so I'm concentrating very hard on that, and generally I'm taking it very seriously. And so you're building something. If you're sort of directly a visual artist, you're making a picture that has some kind of a shape to it. And it might be that kind of in the background at a lower level of organization, or maybe it's a higher level, who knows what's going on here, but somewhere not at the scale of conscious attention, weird kind of self-referential aspects of you as a system are manifesting in the deeper structures of these images you're making. So if you're shooting a film, you're just kind of following something we really don't understand that we call intuition or creative inspiration. You just know when it feels right, etc., etc. I can tell you this is really a thing, I make a little bit of movie stuff, and when you are working on it like a creative film, you're moving the camera around, searching for alignments that just pop in some way, and you often don't know exactly why, but you're just like, aha, that that clicks. Well, then maybe only later do you start to piece together consciously that there was some intelligent organization there that was maybe not merely aesthetic, but somehow semiotic. Well, anyway, I don't want to get sort of too bogged down in all of this, but the point of all of that was just that I'm not only open to, but I really think I do perceive this happening. So, but I also think that what we're seeing in this particular set of films goes beyond this. It uses this as a kind of foundation upon which it then adds sort of finer and finer levels of detail until it builds up something very close to, literally close to this image. We're going to be looking at some more of that stuff here. But just close to this event in a broad kind of total artifact to event alignment. If that all makes sense. Also, I believe that this happened because, by this I mean sort of 9/11 precognition thing. Because I've just seen this particular series of dots connected in this way so many times. And you see enough dots, it's like eventually you have to connect them in that way. And I think that, how to get at this? I feel very crazy when or not crazy exactly, but kind of just, I don't know, internally disconnected in a bad way when I deny the relationship of something like that to something like that. When I see little copies of it so much in such weird surrounding context. See, that's such a huge part of this, is it's about inferring the total context together from all these little pieces. And it's just like there are certain films that just do it so much that it becomes extraordinarily weird, more than weird. It adds up to something incredible, in my opinion. And so when I deny that and say, oh, it's not a real connection, it's something you've kind of imagined in a big data field of noise, you've projected some strange thing in there, I just don't know what that would mean. I can't figure out why I would pick out 9/11 and do all this business and how it could all work this way, because if you try to do this kind of thing with arbitrary contents that you imagine, I have this strange pattern that I'm going to, locate in the world, and try to make, it's like putting together pieces that just don't, it's contrived, and it's clear that it's contrived. Whoops. This stuff is, to me, doesn't seem that way. What the hell's going on here? Oh, because I'm in a weird app land now. That's right. I just wanted to make this kind of, any kind of capture thing I would ever want to do on here, but then it makes it a little hard to use. What I'm trying to do, okay, I just have to do this, and then, there we go. Yeah, that's tricky. I gotta remember that. Well, anyway, maybe that interruption was a sign that it's time to stop talking about this. I'm very desperate to appear sane and rational to you, you see. Because we're talking about such bizarre stuff here. But there's just no way to talk about it and maintain that pretense at all. So, you know, oh well. Because that's right. Right. It's all broken because I don't actually have the thing. Okay. Well, let's think about this picture a little bit. Also, hello. That was an accident as well. Gosh, I'm really sorry to not have better control over this system right now. That is so annoying. It's because of this stupid thing that OS X does now with its dumb multi-desktop tab weirdness that it's, sorry, that it's like rolled the full screen functionality into. And also because I keep hitting the wrong button. Mainly that. Okay, we're just trying to clear that and get a red highlight up, and now finally we're going to talk about this. So we all know what the conscious image is. I just want to jump right into what some of the unconscious associations might be. We've kind of already talked about one, which is that, so let's just get that out of the way to start with. We can visualize the North Tower as a figure in glasses. And you can also kind of read along with that potentially a mouth, you know. It's a little bit of a guy in glasses with a mouth. We have this clear ridged structure here, and just kind of this sense of a hat. And then this giant antenna. So this adds up to some kind of a metal fixture on the head. And then like just some kind of a visor, you know? Maybe it's not sunglasses precisely, but there's something unusual about the eyes, you know? Maybe something, and maybe, depending on how you read it, maybe there's a kind of a gaping mouth with teeth. In that context, this is a figure looking at something. It's looking at the situation on the South Tower. This explosion, which I refer to, I think I said last time, as the atomic kid. I say that because it has a very strange look, this thing, in this particular image. You might ask why I'm so focused on this image precisely. And the real answer to that is, I don't know. This is just the one that seems to carry all of the material that then we see aligning in all the artifacts. So, I don't know. This is just the one. It also happens to be, in my opinion, I'm going to clear this grotesquerie now. The most aesthetically appealing image of 9/11, and just kind of, I don't know, it's just the most potent. It's the one that I always think of in my head when I picture the event. I'm actually not sure who took the image and when it was introduced into circulation. I remember seeing it like right away. And I think it was one that was very widely publicized. So that, I don't know, we should definitely, you know, fact check all that. Probably just do that on camera at some point. Because my interest is just, that's what I was trying to get at with that whole intro, I think. My interest is mainly in getting some, you know, clean vision. And because of that, I'm always happy to play the fool, you know, like this, like publicly going on record with this idea that maybe 9/11 was a big precognitive event, and maybe that has major, like, religious and spiritual importance for the human race, you know? Wow, that's a big and probably to most people pretty crazy idea. And I'm just trying to be honest, like, I do feel often very embarrassed by it somehow. But I can't get rid of this idea. It really, it just seems like, well, the point of making all these videos is to show you guys what I'm seeing, so that I can get a little bit of an external kind of sanity check on all this, I suppose. Because, like I said, I'm really still open to the fact that I'm just really, that me and maybe a bunch of other people at the same time are just playing a weird game or noticing something very serious and profound, but then just interpreting it in completely the wrong way. Or I'm very open to that. I keep that guy around. This is going to relate to something we're going to talk about in a little bit, actually. I keep the skeptic around because if you don't have the inner skeptic, that's when you become a fanatic, essentially. You know, the psyche is sort of like a garden. A lot like a garden, actually. And you have to have cleaning routines in a garden. And that's what the skeptic sub-personality is useful for. It's watching for anomalies. Yeah, its motivation is kind of to squash the anomaly, you know? But in a properly functioning garden, it won't just squat, you know, it ideally you want these things to just deal with weeds. If they start cutting off the heads of flowers, though, that's a very bad situation. So you need the skeptic, but you have to sort of orient them correctly and keep a bit of an eye on them and so on. And it's all about maintaining balance in the garden. Anyway, that's my perspective. So the North Tower and the observer, which is a big part of what the skeptic does, is the skeptic analyzes closely. You know, it observes very closely, because it's looking for any anomalous stuff, for any cracks in the pretense of normality and safety that it tends to regard, you know, with quite a bit of derision. The skeptic knows that just beneath the surface of all that normality, there's, you know, infestations. That's how it would regard these things. So, you know, the fanatical skeptic can't tell the difference between a weed and a flower, or a pest and a spirit guide, let's say. All of that is kind of a little bit implied in this image, I think, especially because it sends out a smoke signal, you know, has the antenna. So I'm always saying this, it's the one that kind of sounds the alarm about whatever is going on here, which is something very strange, with a whole bunch of overlapping contexts. So, okay. Phew. Atomic Kid. Let's wrap back around to that now. And to do that, I'm going to, you know, we're going to learn this eventually, how to use these tools. So it will become more fluid. I want to really magnify the Atomic Kid here. And I think the way to do this is we magnify him or her or it, whatever this is. And we hit one of these buttons. Let's see. capture as file. No, we want to do a new page, I think, which is that. Great. Now I can draw on this. Okay. So I'm going to trace the main thing that I see in this shape. I think you can see many things in this, but I've always seen it this way, and I want to argue that objectively this really does have this property because the lines are actually quite heavy. So I'm just going to start by tracing these dominant black areas of the explosion. You know, I do also want to acknowledge here, because I really don't want to seem like I'm being flippant or anything, like I'm aware that what I'm doing right now is something that could be seen as quite disrespectful. You know, this is a horrible picture, and it's a picture of a whole lot of people dying, actually, all at once. That's part of the it's just part of the horror that we all experience, though. You know, we all watched this image together. So for me, this is part of healing my own 9/11 trauma. You know, I watched this thing happen. It was just a day. I came home from school, and then I saw mass slaughter documented in real time on TV, but in a way that was dissociative a little bit, because we didn't actually see any blood. We just saw this strange spectacle unfold. And then this was the image that became, in my opinion, became really iconic of the event. Okay, so I'm going to do this one as well, even though I don't really want to emphasize that one right now. So I want to sort of acknowledge that that's there, but then immediately reduce its importance. So this is objective. What I've done here is it's a complete trace. Like, I performed a very machinic task here. You could have easily built an algorithm to edge detect its way through this image and pull out exactly this. Okay, so this is not a subjective thing. This is just objective image structure. Now we're going to play a game where we ask, what does that look like? That's subjective. But I have questions also about how subjective that is, because correspondence between images that's done on the basis of the kind of, you know, point for point matching that we've been seeing, and that just happens in high dimensional projection, generally speaking. You know, to me, I really can't see that any other way than as a face. That's funny that deleted my whole crop. Well, that's something to be aware of, so let's just take that again. It's a shame that this doesn't remember its size, but it's fairly quick to get back into that. So, okay, this is destructive now. We can't get back to this state. I wonder if we could, well, who knows? So I really see a face here. So I'm going to be a little bit more creative in how I'm not just going to be a dumb machine performing an edge extraction. I'm going to elaborate this a little bit. You know, I really think there's a very weird suggestion of a face here. Weird because it's so strongly suggested, and it's kind of so expressive. Okay. So that's what I mean when I say the atomic kid. It's not just the explosion exactly. It's this weird way that this particular frame of the explosion comes together. I'm going to keep going now and say that to me, there's a suggestion of a foot, and this whole thing looks like a strange little body. this business here, there's almost a suggestion of kind of gills or wings or something funny, but so that's a weird aspect of this image that I think is a fairly objective, like, unconscious correspondence. There's just a funny accident that it comes together into this weird thing that we could describe in various ways. One way to describe this is that it, because something very terrible is happening to the atomic kid. So it looks, to me, because immediate association is it's something that's had its neck cut and a whole bunch of blood is spilling out down there. So that's evocative of a sacrificial animal, which is a very weird thing to find in this image, being what it is. It also looks to me, I'm going to nix this big trace now. It also looks to me like a small dog, maybe something like a poodle, because there's kind of the feeling of a froofy ear there. There would be kind of the dog face. I don't know, I'm not drawing it correctly, but the back of this thing is strange. There are additional humps that it looks like it's kind of a dog with too many legs, or another way to interpret it would be that there's like somehow another dog back there. So it almost is an image of two dogs, copulating. I do think that's something fairly perceptible there. Another way you might read it is as a person maybe on all fours, or a baby, like a little baby with tiny little stubby baby limbs. In which case maybe it's a baby being slaughtered, which then makes this a very horrifying picture. Or another way to think about it is that it's simply a baby being born, and this is kind of birth, blood and placenta and things wrapped around it. Which then, of course, it means that the South Tower is kind of the mother, and the North Tower is the father, with the weird visor. Or maybe it's the one that speaks or communicates. So then it's also like Logos and Eros. Well, and broadly this just works because the Logos side has like structured lines and maybe it observes and reports, so that's all consciousness and languaged perception. And then over here, we have this very strange picture. That also happens to be fire. And in this case is actually a lot of death and violence. And that also, if we don't now read this as a funny person or animal or creature, in other words, if it's not the atomic kid, but it's something else, one thing we might say about it is that it resembles a rose. And yeah, this is an association that we see. I'm terrible at drawing roses, huh? I don't understand how rose petals work, but I should do a study. Maybe that's a rose. So if that's a rose, then what is this thing? Well, partly it's just implies more rose stuff, because then this can be seen as a thorn. This would make this weird thing with the visor and whatever this, like, what is this? Maybe it's a hose, maybe it's a gardener, you know? So if you perceive this as a rose, and it's a lot more perceptible as a rose, I would say, when it's in motion. We'll take a look at that in a second. Or, I don't know, at some point, I'm sure we'll take a look at it. Because it really looks like a rose unfolding, say in time-lapse. Just the whole kind of animation of it. So if you perceive it that way, then the North Tower starts to take on different potential associations in context, in relationship. Let's see. We hit on a lot there. I kind of whizzed through the logos, eros, of all that. So, you know, that's not going to be understandable, probably, unless people know a little Campbell or Jung or stuff like that. But I guess, let's see. One more thing I'll say about this. This is just, well, actually, there are two major things left to say about this. First thing I want to say is there's a strange astrological business, I think, baked into this. Because another animal association for this thing is a goldfish. In that case, these are definitely like gills or weird things like this. And here's its fish face, you know, I don't know. I've never really seen this that way. This is something that comes out of careful observation of the fields, by which I mean, you know, the material in the artifacts. Sometimes we see fish in connection with these structures. So I can see that. Yeah, it does sort of look like maybe it's a goldfish. But then if it's a goldfish, it also, to me, you know, I already said it's like an animal being slaughtered. So it also has the feeling of like a goat. And well, that's very interesting because it's like an ambiguous thing that implies both maybe fish and goat, which is Capricorn, right? The goat fish. And Capricorn is right next to Aquarius. Let's see here. I'm going to get the mouse tool up. Here we go. Sorry I don't have high resolution on this, but so let's get the drawing tools back. Well, actually, there we go. That'll be good. So there's Capricorn, the goat fish. And I mean, look at that too. Now I know this is just one artist's visualization of this, but I don't know. It's pretty striking. And then, well, and so then this is maybe Aquarius. Maybe the North Tower is Aquarius. I said it was a gardener, but maybe, you know, what do gardeners do? Maybe it's watering this flower. It's Aquarius watering this flower. And then it makes sense that we have blue dominance up here, so it's water stuff. And the antenna, by way of the idea of connection to lightning storms, and this is almost then like storm clouds. So it's rain and storms and, you know, water pouring down. So that's funny, isn't it? That the 9/11 image is almost also like a snapshot of, like it picks out a region of the zodiac that happens to be Aquarius moving into Capricorn, which if we've just let's say if we've just exited Pisces, say around maybe the year 2001. These are, with astrology, this is all strange. We're not sure what we're even talking about. There's this whole layer of kind of psychological metaphor and all kinds of stuff going on. But and then amongst, astrologers, there's all kinds of debate about when the Eon of Aquarius actually begins. Are we already in it? Is it still a long ways off? Did it start a long time ago already? There's many opinions, but let's just say it begins around 2001 for the sake of maximizing the, psychotic degree of interconnection happening here. Well, and then that the entrance into Aquarius would produce this massive image seen by so many, sort of etched into the unconscious of so many, that is in a synchronistic image matchy way a recreation of the new aeonic journey. It's going to be kind of 1,000 years of moving through Aquarius energy, and then 1,000 years of kind of closing out Aquarius in preparation for entering Capricorn. Something like that, perhaps. So, one last, I think, sort of very interesting unconscious connection we can illuminate about this picture. And for this, I'm just going to get the browser, I think. Is the connection to the Crucifixion. I don't want to use Chrome anymore. Chrome is currently causing me weird headaches with YouTube. So we've switched to, I almost said witched, I think, but yeah, we've switched to Firefox, appropriately enough. Okay, I'm not going to get bogged down reading this terribleness. Right. Crucifixion. I wonder what kind of stuff appeared in the autofill there. Also, I can't spell. I'd like to find one that really emphasizes this, but most of these images are going to contain this. That's quite an interesting one. Yeah, let's go with this. Let's see if we can find a higher resolution copy of this or one like this. Well, I don't know, we'll go with this. I can buy it. That's nice. That's not what I want, though. View image. There we go. Okay. This is the side that Christ's wounds are, or Christ's wound is usually depicted from. Like, it's very interesting because we don't see it here, but if Christ has a crown of thorns, that's a match for the North Tower. And we do have then the correct diagonal relationship. Also, we have this thing that's a cross, and that's really not far away from that. And then we have nails in the hands, and the antenna it's also a match for nails. Well, and now this starts to get very weird because you see, I don't know why I drew Pinhead as a heart. That's hilarious, but well, maybe that makes a good deal of sense because that's quite a Christian image, isn't it? The heart wrapped in thorns, burning. I can't draw right now for some reason, but here's some kind of hilarious Pinhead, who is a Christ figure in his own way, which is to say, he's more of a, he definitely it's an Antichrist resonator as well. But so anyway, this notion of sort of nails, crosses, thorns, helmets, heads, all of this, it definitely makes this a little Christly. And then the handedness is about that side being the wound. And here, I'm not sure who this is meant to be, but some angel is collecting the blood in a chalice here. I suppose that then gets wrapped into all the Grail mythology. Just all just individuation stuff, basically. So I really think that Christians, especially maybe, on 9/11, we're witnessing a little replication of the crucifixion, or at least of these iconic representations of the crucifixion, that due to the way the myth is constructed, for reasons maybe we understand, maybe we don't, places the wound on this side of Christ. This is an amazingly symbolic image. Sorry, just looking at this now, you do you have the sense of the twin pillars here, even kind of basically towers, skull and crossbones down here. This is an almost a Masonic tracing board. Well, see, it's all kind of in the same area of image, in my opinion. And 9/11 somehow accidentally, in huge quotes, resembles this, whatever this is. It's also just obvious, here are the twins that flank the Christly structure in the middle. Jung talks a lot about this, the two thieves that you often see surrounding Christ and so on. Yeah. Okay, sorry, I lied. It's the Christ stuff. We're going to talk more about this in a second as soon as we jump back into Hellraiser, because it's, a big deal in that context. One last thing is that we might read something about doctors here. I said last time that we have sort of the sense of like burning cigarettes, but another way to read the North Tower inanimately is as a syringe. And let's see here. I want to show this because it really is a striking correspondence, I think. Because syringes have obviously they have this metal tip, but then they also have close to that tip the sort of black rubber plunger element. So that maps onto that. See? Here, let's show those with highlight. Connects to that. That connects to that. I would argue that the measurement lines correspond to what we see there. So, another point of correspondence. And then, typically, because of the way the whole kind of plunger action, or whatever you call this, works. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Well, let's do it again. Whoops. Well, how nice that happened. Can I get this saved back? Oh, excellent. Okay. Phew. Not a terrible recovery from that error. We're in there. Okay. This band, I think, can be said to correspond then to that. This is like it's another sort of segment of the rectangle there. So maybe you think I'm being generous with all of that, but I would say there's 4 points of correspondence that then form together, obviously, a gestalt that can add up to a syringe. So I think that if that's a syringe, then maybe you are also perceiving it as a figure. You know, if you're perceiving all these associations together, that's an interesting question to ask what this all adds up to. Okay, yeah, and then another crucial. Sorry, there are so many of these that we're gonna need. I feel like I'm gonna leave ones out. But here's a final one, which I guess to illustrate this, I'll connect Hellraiser with King Kong here in a second. We said this almost looks like two dogs having sex. I think in general we can think about this as it's something violent, but it could also be something sexual. You know, it's fiery and it's an explosion. So kind of passion and orgasm is implicated here. And there is still this lingering lingering issue of the sorry, this derailed my train of thought. This is really so... I can't think of another object that this resembles more... Like, this is so amazing, especially the way that that kind of lines up with that, really. That's quite a match, in my opinion. So anyway, hold on. Let's clear all this out again. The lingering issue that maybe this is... There's this weird kind of pun with burning flesh. And so maybe sort of exposed flesh. And, you know, we said this was eros. So all of these things kind of line up together. Sex and death and birth. It's all happening on this side. Which means that another potential read of this is that this is someone perceiving and or maybe filming, because, you know, it's just a sense of like something where the eyes ought to be. So one way to read this is maybe as a camera, you know, it's a person holding up a camera. That would maybe sort of make sense with this because it's more like metal hardware and stuff. So it's like a person holding up a recording device maybe. And well, what are they filming? Well, maybe they're filming something very violent. Maybe they're filming something very beautiful, like a work of art, or like a flower. Maybe they're filming sex, in which case this is like a pornographer. And well, that one's interesting because it seems to kind of make a lot of sense in the global scene if we do read this as a person wearing glasses with a funny hat. It's, you know, it's a shadow figure. So it almost starts to look like, you know, I don't know, someone in like a trench coat snapping pictures of, I don't know, some very strange thing happening. Doesn't it? Well, so these are some things anyway that I see in this picture. But that I want to stress I didn't, at least consciously, see in this picture to start with. These are things that I just saw lined up with red twins and image matches and other things in the artifacts consistently in a trans-artifactual sort of way that has led me to perceive this stuff in what I take to be the reference object. So we'll keep this around again, since I do think it's the reference object. Get rid. Yeah, I want to be careful I don't interrupt the upload. No, that's fine. Okay. I find this rather obnoxious that this player has defaulted to that space, because I really wanted to keep just the minimalist black background to emphasize the content this time out. Okay, so we're about to jump back into some film. analysis. But I'm going to take a short break to have a snack and get a little more settled. So, back in a flash.
Now, we're never going to be able to observe directly what happens in these very short time intervals. And yet we feel that this technique we have of expanding our time scale and looking is perfectly legitimate, yet we can't prove it. And this is another example of the subtlety of time. Now, just for fun, I can take something that takes place in a long time and squeeze it down, telescope it, so it takes place in a short time. Here is a rose, and it's growing, but nothing seems to be happening. You can watch it for 5 minutes, and then you get bored. But if we take a picture once an hour and show them rapidly like this, you can see the flower unfolding in an almost explosive way.
So, before we go back to Hellraiser 3, I wanted to jump back to Hellraiser 1, actually, to illustrate this association between the explosion and the rose. This is a very weird YouTube clip that the YouTube algorithm gods just threw in my path one day because I had watched this other thing about holograms. I think it literally said, you know, because you watched this, and then it threw up that thumbnail. So bizarre. Anyway, we're not going to watch this. This is a very cool video, though. Well, so going back to Hellraiser, I'm definitely reading this thing in the image match context now. You know, there really is a funny sense in which, you know, we went through a lot of associations with this image. I think the primary unconscious thing is a birth. Because I think this is like the father. Maybe it's the king. Maybe it's the crown, which would make this the queen. Giving birth to the child. Now, what is this child? Maybe it's a divine child. Maybe it's some strange, horrific, evil mutant child. Does kind of look that way. The Atomic Kid, I think, is very strange. Well, so, you know, speaking about timelines and movie timelines, this is one of those areas where this thing in isolation is just some weird movie idea. But it appears in proximity to a whole bunch of strange imagistic content that we're about to get that's going to perform a bunch of tight matches. So, let's watch that happen. Now, I have this idea. This isn't what I want, actually. I want to just... Well, eraser tool is fine. Really, I just want... I have this idea that... Whoops. If we run this stuff at slower speeds, in other words, if we can just never run it at normal speed, maybe the YouTube algorithms won't be able to identify... It's so weird, isn't it, that in this context, talking about all this stuff, that then, like, a major aspect of what I have to deal with in creating these videos is trying to trick algorithms into not seeing pattern relationships between this and the content it's attempting to ID. But yeah, so I wonder... Maybe that'll help us get away with something. In any case, it does make for a slightly more psychedelic experience. Yeah, it's still too loud. I'm just going to kind of talk over this as it plays out. Yeah, it does look a little fish-like, this thing. It's also, its teeth are evocative to me already of this situation. Here, if I switch to my drawing tools, right, then I can still do that and just get right back into this. Great. Now we don't have any hovering player problems. That behaves as normal. Fantastic. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of emphasis on that mouth, you know. Oh, gosh, hold on. Yeah, you know, and now we're definitely in weird match territory, I think. I know this is weird stuff to consider, because, yeah, it's just some weird element of the set, and it's not so unusual, but we had this weird thing that kind of looked like this, and now in the image, this shows up. I don't know if this is necessary or not. I always feel the need to kind of explain myself a little bit, though. I've just come to view media in a slightly different way, I think. To me, it's like I've just become pretty bored, I think. Somehow this is part of what this amounts to, you know. I've become bored with the narrative level of movie content. First of all, it's all become very frightfully generic in recent years, I think. In a bad kind of way, you know. This is what most people seem to be viewing. And then you have like film critics and stuff who also are mainly concerned with this, except they're viewing this in a high-level sort of thematic way, where they're thinking about the action symbolically, to elucidate the meaning of the film, which is great. But not very many people at all are looking down here, where all this other stuff is sitting. And once you have started looking at this stuff, and once you look at it for long enough, your perception starts to become flattened in an interesting way. And under this new perception, these things, they're large things, but they're just elements amongst many elements that are kind of whizzing by in this weird picture box. And so as someone who's very focused on the ground, it's just a fact that in some of these films, a whole lot of these start kind of floating by in the ground in proximity to things that then seem to emulate this and that seem to replicate this whole structure, and that also then kind of already metaphorize it as something happening inside of a television set that then produces an awakening. That's all kind of contained already in this artifact, I think. So, you know, that makes me wig out. What the fuck is happening when that happens? if that were to happen in this way even once, I think it's weird and fascinating and probably implies something incredible. The fact that it happens in such a complete way in so many artifacts that often otherwise seem kind of unrelated. They're just spread out over a whole diverse range of stuff, but then they all seem to share little copies of this thing that then also, when you then put them all together, create a story, actually. Well, actually, that's the side that the pictures go on, and then over here you have the story. And then that story, well, let's not jump the gun, maybe. In fact, let's just continue to move here. So then we're out into a hospital. You know, I can't talk too much about the, at this point anyway, about the mythic content here. That's an aspect of this you just have to trust me on, that the places in which these pictures occur are located in very fascinating locations in the mythology that have just implications that are just absolutely crazy. For now, I really want to focus on the image match context. I do want to acknowledge that I'm pretty certain that there are parts of this that I'm somehow my net has become a little wide or something, because I think this is matchy, you know. I'm like, okay, we have these two kind of pillar-like structures here, and then this striated thing happening here. The light creating these sharp lines. I think it's, I don't know, just the general color of this too. On the other hand, it's just a shot of a wall that's lit nicely. But again, it's about what we've already seen and primarily about what we're about to see. Okay, I'm actually not sure how, oops. How long it takes to get to the next sort of salient. Okay. Roughly here. Kirsty opens the box, and then this business. We get the negative image, and a lot of smoke starts coming out. So that's another piece of this image that is happening. And then we have this image of a television set. With a rose on it. It's a very special kind of TV, though, because, I mean, you know, it's not like such an uncommon design or whatever, but it is this kind in particular, you know. So we're on channel 8 here. I find that interesting. I don't know precisely what that's about. 88 is a number that seems to follow this structure around. You know, I don't really get it. I mean, visually it's a mandala, so I get that. But why this specifically? And I mean, you know, okay, sort of maybe roughly very roughly, maybe. Maybe that's the way in which this is a sense of a fish, you know? More like that. And this is the sunglasses, you know? Yeah, maybe. Maybe we cracked it. Or maybe there's something much more esoteric or weird going on here. The thing is, I just noticed that this number accompanies this stuff when it happens, often. It happens in Hellraiser 3. And it happens in Gremlins. It really happens in Back to the Future. I'm not sure how late I want to stay up tonight. Kind of feeling like staying up late and watching more movies, but I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, it definitely happens in Back to the Future. So, you know, it's around in this stuff. Irrational contents, I don't know why they appear, but they do. And, well, it's a rose in time-lapse opening up. So it's, you know, it's visually a match for the explosion unfolding. And it's on a TV as well, which is how most of us saw this. And if you connect the planes, as it were, and merge what's happening inside the TV with what's just happening in the frame, this is communication, because TV controls, that's banded like this. So, okay, that's the North Tower. And then, you know, here's the South Tower, and there's the explosion. So it's quite matchy. We have all this static. No, it's funny. I want to get my thing back. There we go. Then we have this very interesting image. Here, maybe I'll set this up as a loop, actually. When it works, it's really fluid. But it's buggy, so... We caught a little bit of Kirsty there. Oh, well, maybe that's okay. But wow, I find that really, like, what the hell's going on? You know, that's so close. It's close now, not just... How to put this? Like that... The still image correspondences are awfully impressive. But to have like kind of like a looping video frame that works, that aligns like that, and that captures the gestalt animation of the event like that. And again, you know, here's our big aluminum resonator. It's correctly handed, you know. One reasonable question here, and you know, and we ask this in the more prolonged analysis. I don't know if we answer it at all, but now it really is bothering me that so we're going to be a little bit more precise about this loop. But, you know, one reasonable question. So, the question is, we don't need to be fancy about this. The question is, what is Barker up to here? I think the answer is probably, who knows? I think he saw an opportunity to do a cool, weird, psychedelic thing here. I think it definitely, he's relating this to what's on the screen, because we have that rose unfolding in time-lapse. This is a movie that features, many images of Christ and so on. So we were saying before that one read of this is as kind of unconscious crucifixion. Do we think maybe that's what Barker's trying to do here? To evoke the cross, and then so there's Christ, and then so that's his wound, with the blood kind of flowing in reverse, and then that's related to the rose on the TV. It makes kind of less sense in that context, though, because of this thing with the TV and everything. And also, my question would be, like, why? Why is he doing that so subliminally like that when he's comfortable putting in direct images of Christ and the cross and all this? That all appears. Why go through the trouble of doing this insane Kubrickian thing of, like, engineering a subliminal image of Christ on the cross into this psychedelic moment? And, you know, I'm not saying he didn't do that. It comes together so kind of perfectly here. Look at this thing here. It's kind of like another 88 there. Strange. Well, you know, who knows? So many questions. I don't want to get so bogged down, actually, in asking about how these things could appear locally. The fact is, they appeared there somehow, so there's always going to be some kind of causal explanation for how, you know... But eventually it's going to boil down to some person in their head, for some reason, had a series of creative thoughts that caused them to put this in a movie. So that could be whatever. The fact is, it ended up there. And then it ends up there with other strange material, you know? Because it's not just this image. We're just coming out of this whole other business that ended with these strange rectangle matches, you know? So it's that, then I can't imagine that like that's some strangely extra meta coincidental thing then, even if we buy the notion that Barker is just trying to make a Christ reference with that other content. And in any case, we have the really strange situation there, just kind of globally, of three weird things that are all just related somehow by accident, like 9/11, Christ, and and then, like, I don't know, the Hellraiser franchise of, like, movies, and then all these other movies that somehow stack up underneath it with the same replications and generally the same global contexts. All those just connect by accident. I don't know, like, there's just strange stuff to just go together somehow. So maybe all those are being covertly organized in eternity? That's how that works? And the perception of precognition is really a big illusion, because time itself is just an illusion. There's just some eternal present, and then that's, I don't know, wearing history like a mask, and it just wears this same image again and again and again in all these different ways. Well, hard to say. Okay, let's keep going with this a little bit. Well, actually, you know what? Let's not. That's enough. Let's jump back into Hellraiser 3. Or Kirsty. Okay. Here we have this exchange. This is good, actually, because I think I had something additional to say about the Pyramid Gallery. Let's see, what was it? Oh, right. So basically, the same thing. Same things. We might think that, okay, Hickox. Well, there's a couple options here. One thing is that I did read an interview with Hickox where he talked about studying the first film very closely. So maybe he noticed what Barker was doing with the imagery there. And is kind of like replicating it here. In which case, Hickox has kind of embedded almost like a commentary on the first film, I think, where he's spelled out the obvious imagistic correspondence, because then we just see Christ literally here, So, but again, my question is, like, why are these films doing that so specifically? Why are they showing you Christ explicitly as just a direct image like that, and then also showing you weird ground embedded replications of this particular aspect of the Christ image, the wound and the blood coming out of it. It's not like a mainline aspect of this image. I think the stigmata, the crown of thorns, the crucifix itself, that's the main stuff. When you get into the wound and the two thieves and these various other aspects, it starts to get a little more esoteric, I think. Well, so is that what it is? It's like the esoteric part is placed in the ground, but then we also just have alien heads and things up here. So it just doesn't make sense really from that standpoint to me very much at all. I have to say. It just makes a lot more sense to me as some kind of impossible 9/11 precognition thing. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. Let's advance here. Well, so, okay. Let's leave the Pyramid Gallery for now. Well, actually, we're just going to step directly outside of it. Which happens... When does that happen? It's when Joey and Terry revisit the Pyramid Gallery. Is that closer back here? Here it is. Okay. So, we have matchy things occurring pretty much right away here. First of all, we have Joey's quite red, sort of strawberry red toned hair. It's our explosion resonator appearing in front of its correct tower. Terry's legs are aligned more with the North Tower, but they're kind of towards that side. And considering the image as a whole, all of this is happening on the South Tower resonating lower left-hand side. While up here we have metal rectangular stuff. There's some kind of a wire. Looks like there's two of these, so it's another double rectangle thing kind of stamped here in this location that already has the twin pyramids. Remember, there's another one over there. So, well, I won't talk about that right now. She has buckles and a lot of jewelry. So that adds to the North Tower resonance.
Been over there about a month.
So we are a little blown out here. Oops. There we go. This is another one that just gives me the willies, really. Well, remember how I said, let's just get into it. I think we are going to go back to Hellraiser 1. There's just a couple more things there I want to look at that are pretty striking. So maybe we're actually not going to... no, okay. We'll close out Hellraiser and look at a bit of Arachnophobia, and then that'll be it for today. And then we'll be done with Hellraiser for a while. We're going to jump to Critters and a few other things. The sense of the Atomic Kid as a dog. There's her dog. So, South Tower. And then here we have a figure. It's hard to see here, but we'll get a closer look at this in a second. In very sort of like heavy dark sunglasses. So, there's the North Tower. And they exist in the correct diagonal relationship that's even kind of picked out there for you with the leash. So those two together constitute a match. This is actually a very high dimensional match with very weird properties. So we're gonna look at just this plane in isolation in a second, and I'll spell it all out. But this is actually just one occurrence of this in the total picture here. Okay, so that's what I would describe as the innermost plane here. Maybe we'll call that like the first plane. And it's a match. Maybe it would be useful here to distinguish this with colors. So now there's going to be a green layer. It happens again here because we have these two big rectangles in the ground. I find this pretty dimensional because they're again, they're banded. And if you pay attention to the reflections, something just incredible is happening. First of all, this, the South Tower resonator is catching some kind of a lamp or something in the reflection, or maybe it's behind the glass. I can't quite tell. I think it's maybe like a lit window in one of those adjacent buildings. But anyway, look at the color of it. It's exact. Like, I think it would be a little silly to actually use the color analyzer. Because it's like there's just a lot of variation, and it's it's very obvious that we're in the same color space. I just find it funny that I have that ability like so on tap now. I know that stuff's built into the OS and everything too, but now it's like directly accessible. Well, so anyway, so there's the explosion. So South Tower, and here this catches the reflection of some tall thing that bridges the whole window there. So there's the antenna. North Tower. So it's another match right behind him. Guess we'll call that the second plane. Maybe I will include the... Oops. That's pretty sloppy. We can do better than that. I'm a little out of practice with this tablet. I don't know if that's obvious. Include kind of the dividing lines here. And then the third plane in this is a little harder to make sense of because it's kind of cropped out here by the way it's filmed. I guess we'll use yellow for this one. So here we have a telephone pole, so that extends up out of the frame and terminates in some kind of thing up here with some wire, And then here we have an aluminum beam with these red no parking signs. So it's a little funny here. The aluminum ought to be over there. It can't be, I guess, because of the nature of this location. It's so weird to think about this in a causal way like that. I'm certain that's not the correct way to think about this. I'm just a confused monkey, as always. Don't know what's going on here, but but anyway, they're on the same plane of the image. Do you see that? If you think about it in 3D, they're just both right there adjacent on the sidewalk. So they just naturally align together. They form a correctly handed pair with a communication pole over here and something red over here. The aluminum is on the wrong side here, which then throws off the global handedness of the whole image. But not by very much, I don't think. So, how best to indicate that? There's plane 3. See how they're kind of nested within each other? That's why it's mandala-like. And the picture, it gets more image resolution, it seems to me, as it moves in towards the center. The third plane is kind of fuzzy. The second plane now gets some more precise gestalt aspects of the image. And then the innermost scene captures kind of a complete unconscious association, which is the atomic kid as the dog being walked by the man in glasses with the silver head, which this guy has gray hair. So we'll get into the dimensionality. It's actually quite a high dimensional match. We'll get into that. Well, maybe just right now, actually. I just wanted to distinguish the planes there. I think that's important to see how the total structure works and how it all aligns together like that. You see how the third plane and the second plane conspire to sort of, in fact, because then he appears in that. It's like that rectangle is kind of triple selected. And well, what are the things that appear there, right? If we were to just extract those as little clouds, well, we have, let's just do that. There's something that kind of looks like this. It's a red, orange, yellow, fire-tinged little blob. So that appears there. Excuse me. Then we have this signage that's in red and white. I don't see a ton of that white there. The way that image comes together, it's mostly the red is what pops. And now this one, let's use an indicator. This one's complex, and I find it to be quite dimensional. Got a frog in my throat here. Hold on a second. There we go. It's a no parking sign. Whoops. I would like my drawing tool back, please. It's a no parking sign. So that immediately conjures as a directly adjacent association vehicles. So this is the rectangle that is associated with vehicles, like the plane. That hits the South Tower. And it's especially interesting to me because it's a no parking sign. So it's a place where a vehicle shouldn't be, but that maybe might be because there's like a prohibition against it, Also fascinating to me is that, I think I mentioned this in the last video, look at how that comes together in the image. It forms a visual R. I mean, pretty strikingly, I think. You can see it starting to happen up there again. So a bunch is happening there. It's another explosion resonator. And in fact, it adds a bit of dimensionality because there's some white there, which is a pronounced element of that area of the image. There's a lot of white speckling down there, white smoke, and then this white highlight on the tower. Maybe that's how this works here, actually, in certain ways. Perhaps that beam is more about that highlight line. The stem of the rose, in other words. So it's an explosion resonator. It's a terrible attempt to draw a plane. It conjures vehicles because it's a parking sign, and then it creates two, red R's, so it's the red right hand again. It's so weird, that it's from Paradise Lost, I think. We should look at that. So like, wow, that's a lot happening there. And then we have this North Tower resonating stuff, but if we were to subdivide that, then again, we have a little dog. A little dog in a red leash. Red collar. A little dog with, we'll see in a second, pretty flappy, poodle-like ears. So, so if we were thinking before that maybe the explanation for this was that Hickox is deliberately trying to evoke a Christ image and all of this, what do we think is going on here? Is this just really an accident? Well, it's an accident that really works in a pretty precise way. And that happens 1, 2, 3 times in this picture. And again, in a way where the planes are, this is what's so incredible. They're literally like stacked, like these elements align in the space. Did I mention this already? We have this, I think maybe I did. We have this, another kind of echo of this. It's like this image is just like sort of like stamped on top of this multiple times in this really funny way. It's so strange. Especially considering everything else we looked at in the Pyramid Gallery, that's this set. I find this really, really odd. Okay, so let's advance the clip here. Oh, I'm in the wrong window. Now I'm confused. Oh yeah, click over here. There we go.
That's bull. My boyfriend bought something here last week.
Good night.
Are you sure?
Sure. Lived here 20 years. I see everything.
What I really need is a smooth kind of I guess I can use the mouse. Why is this not working? Oh, because of this stupidity. Hold on. Okay. There's a particular frame I'm looking for. We can already see how strange this is, though. There it was. Well, we'll just use this. It's fine. Because the little dog is being choked, which is really what this kind of looks like. It's got this mouth. It kind of almost looks like its tongue is hanging out here. It's making this distressed face. Here, let's look at this a little closer. His pants have this same gridded texture, right? Same kind of thing we saw on JP's legs. Then we go up the torso, and we have this black belt buckle thing. Then a black shirt. Then this very particular arrangement here on the face with these glasses, and then silver hair. On the little dog, we have an almost perfect statement of the constellation pattern, you know. Aluminum, and then off at this lower left pitched trajectory. Sometimes you see it as an upper pitch diagonal as well. Because that's the sense of it kind of exploding outwards that way. Like, I think you see that a little bit in the Dawnwood painting. But, yeah, I just find that so strange. The North Tower antenna has this very clear alternating silver, black, silver pattern. Silver, black, silver. He's a broad match for the antenna. And, you know, again, I know the handedness is a little broken here, but it does have this big aluminum beam that, like, manages to appear in the frame with it. So just move that over a little bit. It matches so correctly. There's his sunglasses. The silver head. And there's his little dog. 111 manages to appear over here. Actually, Google, I think, lists the address for the Pyramid Gallery. Let's check this. Whoops. I guess we could just select the mouse. Yeah, as 100 to 116. So. Well, here's something I just discovered the other day as I was exploring our new tablet tools. I deliberately paused it here so that I could show this again. The first time I discovered this, I just paused it here because this is just a nice formal alignment. You see that it creates a perfectly parallel line between the leash and that metal pole, and also the line pattern on the background. And also I just think the dog is in this very cute little position there, because this guy's actually being very gentle. They foleyed in the sound of a dog whimpering, but this actual dog I don't think is in any real distress. Maybe. I'm not sure. I don't know animals that well. Or not dogs anyway. I've had pet rodents and birds and things, but so anyway, I get nervous before I show things like this because they're just so weird, but Okay, here it comes. I'm going to switch into this tool set. We're going to get measure. And we're just going to figure out what this angle actually is. Come on. We're going to define that. There is the joint. Define that. There is the... it's a little hard to select this with the pen. Yeah, there we go. That's about perfect. You can see it really, yeah, I mean, maybe I'm sort of biasing that a little bit, but man, it's really close to 119 degrees. Or is this somewhere right in that region anyway? Isn't that funny? I think that's just really strange. Okay. Come on. Okay. Well, we're very far from done here. I really want to talk about what then immediately follows here, which is like go into kind of a back room of the pyramid gallery into an image that is loaded with holographic or fractally placed, whatever we're going to describe as matches again.
These places are always all shut. You break into
But I don't want to be up super late doing this, I guess. So yeah, I think I'm going to be kind to myself and just shut down and go to bed, basically. So yeah, we'll just resume this next time. Okay, well, I hope this was, again, an interesting one. Yeah, talk to you later.